Hello, writers, and welcome back to Spooky Writes. My name's Kemal Onor, and if this is your first time watching, I highly recommend that you hit subscribe. Give this video a good thumbs up if you get any good information from this video. So today we're going to be talking about, do your writing ideas actually matter? So let's head into the storm. Okay, writes. Now, one of the big things that can stifle a lot of people from writing is the idea that their writing idea isn't good enough. Is my idea good enough to spend and devote so much time writing? Should I abandon my idea before I even start? Is my idea not any good? Will no one care about whatever my idea is for my writing? And if this is an issue that you're facing, like so many people out there, I have to tell you that ideas are a dime a dozen. Your writing idea doesn't really matter if you have no execution, if you have no follow through. There are so many people who say, I have a great idea. And I personally, I hear this all the time from people when I explain to them that I'm an author, that I'm a writer, that I've had pieces published. They'll tell me, I have a great idea for a story. I have a great idea for a novel, but they never follow through with it. If the big thing that is preventing you from writing is thinking my idea is not good enough, just write it. Because I've been surprised at stories that I've had accepted where I might have written it and I think this idea might not be the greatest in the world, but I make it original and I write about it, and it ends up creating a story. And at a certain point, you have to realize that you are typically too close to the piece to be making that judgment call of, is my idea good enough, or should I stop before I even start writing this piece? So the fact of the matter is that so many people have ideas every single day, and there are no original ideas anymore. And that concept that there are no original ideas at all. So why are we so concerned about originality in the first place? Why are we so stifled by this notion of my story has to be original or else I shouldn't be writing in the first place? My story has to be unique. My story has to be new. My story has to be different from all the other stories. And I have to tell you that this is what is preventing you from writing. Throw the notion that ideas matter at all out the window, because execution and follow through are the only two things that you need. You don't need to be making fresh, unique ideas. It's great and it helps out with the creative process, but at the end of the day, if you can have a million ideas, and if you have no follow through, if you have no commitment to the craft of writing, they're never going to be finished. You have to understand that ideas are a dime a dozen, and that it doesn't matter how good your idea is, it doesn't matter how great your concept is, unless you are actually writing, unless you are sitting at that computer every single day and writing as much as you possibly can. It doesn't matter. Your ideas don't matter unless you're acting on them. Your ideas don't matter unless you are acting on them, unless you are following through on them. You have to understand that ideas are truly a dime a dozen. And I give away ideas every single time that I film a video on this channel. At the very end of my videos, I have a little bonus for all of you viewers who stay through the end, and it's a little writing prompt. And these are ideas that can serve as launching pads, and you can take them in any kind of direction that you want. And that's the great thing about writing prompts, is that writing prompts ideas, they're starting sentences that can then be taken in any number of directions. So don't worry about people stealing your idea. I get this all the time from people when people begin the submission process. They're very concerned. Oh, what if I submit my novel? What if I submit my story and the agent or the editor rejects it, but then they steal my idea? No one is trying to steal your idea. No one is looking to steal other people's idea. If you claim to be a writer and you're looking to steal other people's ideas, get out of the business. You have no place in a creative field such as writing. And so ideas, again, the concept of is my idea good enough? That's not up for you as the author to decide. That the person who it comes down to is an editor or an agent. And at that point, you're opening yourself up to being scrutinized. You're opening yourself up to other eyes. But if you have to act on your ideas, again, ideas do not matter unless you are actively working on them and actively writing towards finishing and completing these ideas. That's why, again, this is why I always recommend that you work on short stories, because if you have an idea for a novel, you might have 10 ideas for different novels, and novels are much lengthier than a 2,000 to 5,000 word short story. So short stories, I recommend them because you can get so many different ideas out in a much shorter span of time. So short stories are, and again, there's no reason why you can't revisit any of those ideas. A lot of my longer pieces began as short stories, and I got to the end of it and I said, hey, let me see if I can continue this, or there might be some lingering question that I have after I've written this short story, and it's perfectly okay to then extend and continue down that breadcrumb trail and say, where is this leading me to? So you have to understand that ideas are ideas, and without action, without execution, they're meaningless. So you have to understand that this is why it's so important to not feel like that your idea has to be good enough, because who's judging whether your idea is good enough it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter unless you write the thing. So you have to understand that writing is not all about ideas. Writing is much more than ideas. There's so many people who have great ideas every single day and they never act on them. They never sit down and commit to finishing and following through with those ideas. So if this is the big thing that is preventing you from jumping into writing, if this is the big thing that is preventing you from starting your manuscript, from starting the act of a short story, from starting the act of starting a novel because you think your idea isn't good enough, there are so many ideas every single day, and there are many good ideas. There are also many bad ideas, and you can have the worst idea in the entire world, and you can compare that with the best idea in the entire world, and it only comes down to who actually follows through with his or her idea. So understand that ideas are meaningless without execution, without follow through. You have to understand that writing is a craft. It's something that you have to do as much and as often as you can. And again, if you have an idea for a story about a dog that can talk, or an idea about a story about whatever it is, an idea about a clown who is friendly, and you can always think about ways that you can tweak and edit and revise your stories, but ideas should not be the focal point of your writing craft, especially early on. Early on, you have to write just so much bad writing has to get out of you. Just have to keep writing, keep plugging away. And once you start to develop your own voice, that's when you'll really start to see what stories resonate with you as the author, and what sort of stories you want to tell as the author, because so many people think, I have to write a certain story in a certain style, I have to write to a certain audience. And while this is all true, this is something that you should not be concerned of when you're just beginning the writing process. When you're starting out as an author, do not be concerned about whether your idea is good enough. Do not be concerned about what other people are going to think about it, because when you're beginning as a writer, there's so much fear involved with just putting yourself out to the world. So understand that at some point you just have to put your ideas down on paper. You just have to start writing, and your ideas can totally change through the course of the writing process. I've had so many stories that have drastically changed, from the title to who my protagonist character is, to what the overall conflict is in the story, just through the act of revising and editing, because I'll have some jumping off point, I'll have some starting point when I'm writing, and my story will I'll start to write, and for me personally, I have to write the story to completion in order to evaluate, and at that point you can start to critique your idea a little bit more. But do not be concerned about whether your idea is great. And anyone who's like, I have $1 million idea, it's absurd, because I would much rather see someone say, here is something that I have written as opposed to saying, this is my $1 million idea, because ideas are worthless without execution, without follow through. So many people have millions and millions of ideas every single day, and they never follow through on them. They never actually take the time to sit down and write. So understand that this is what you need to be focusing on. You need to be focusing on following through with your stories. You need to be focusing on writing your stories down. And if you're not practicing the art of writing, your ideas are going to be meaningless. There'll be notes in a notebook or thoughts that you might have on the bus. And unless you actually sit down and write these stories, they'll never be stories. Ideas are ideas. Stories are completely different from ideas. Understand that unless you actually take the time to follow through with these ideas, it's meaningless. You have to just work at writing. And a lot of people a lot of people feel like they'll start an idea, and while they're writing their story, they'll get another idea that's even better. And so again, I highly recommend you write short stories, because you're not going to be halfway through a novel. You're not going to be 30, 40,000 words into a novel. Whereas a short story, you might be 1,500 words in on a short story, and you might say, oh, I have a much better idea for a different short story. And you can write that short story and have it be separate, or you can change the story that you're currently writing to fit more in line with this new idea. So ideas are great for generating content, for being creative, and you should try and be as creative as you can with your ideas. But again, you don't want it to be that hurdle, that obstacle that's standing in your way from actually sitting down and writing and facing the blank page. So hopefully you found this video helpful. Again, I highly recommend you hit like, subscribe, and as always, keep it spooky. And then of course, here's your bonus for sticking all the way to the end of the video. I watched the old man slowly stir the water in the pot until it became a roiling bubble. I smelled something strange in the air that I could only describe as blank. So, set your timer and start writing. Thank you so much.